What's up, motocross action? I'm Josh Mosman, and today we have the most highly anticipated bike of the new model season. It's the 2021 Honda CRF450. Honda first introduced their CRF450 4-stroke back in 2002, but this bike really hit its prime from 2005 to 2008, and I still know riders who consider that bike to be the best production 450 4-stroke that ever hit dealer floors. Unfortunately, Honda took a step back in 2009 when they introduced their cab-forward design. This put more weight on the front end, they shortened the wheelbase and made the head angle steeper, and unfortunately the characteristics that produced plagued this bike from 2009 all the way to 2016, and riders really struggled to find comfort on this bike as it was shaky at speeds and just overall unstable to ride. In 2017, Honda hired on Ken Roczen to try to get Honda back to their winning ways, and they also went with a whole new geometry design on the frame, trying to mimic what they did back in 2008 and put it on their updated 2017 model. Since I've been with MXA, I've only been able to ride the 2019 and 2020 Honda CRF450s, and for me, I struggled with the same characteristics that the rest of the MXA wrecking crew struggled with, and that was that the bike was shaky at speeds, unstable, and just overall hard to ride. The engine was extremely fast, especially in 2019, as it produced 60 horsepower straight off the showroom floor, being the fastest engine you could buy stock. In 2019, this bike was really fast, but 2020, they had the same exact engine with new mapping that made it just slightly slower and brought it down to 59 horsepower. The 2021 Honda CRF450 is all new, and when we say all new, we really mean it. It has a new frame and subframe with updated geometry focusing on flexibility and reducing weight. It also has new suspension, a new swing arm, new hydraulic clutch actuation, updated clutch internals, a new gas tank, new plastics, a new seat, new triple clamps, new airbox, and an updated engine with new mapping. So really, this bike is all new from head to toe, and I'm really excited to get out there and break it down and see if I can find the same comfort on this bike that I found on some of the other 2021 models. So stay tuned to the rest of this video as we dive into the details on this new 21 Honda 450 and break down our first ride impressions after day one. Alright guys, it's 5 o'clock at Glen Helen. MXA is the last media group here. Honda's shutting down the track, nobody else riding. I put 2.5 hours on the 2021 Honda CRF450, so it was a long day and a lot of riding that went into this bike. When Honda put together their marketing tagline for what they wanted to focus on for the new 2021 model, they used razor sharp cornering as the tagline, kind of the marketing scheme that they wanted to focus on for this year. And with that, they wanted to improve the power, they wanted to improve the handling, and they wanted to improve the consistency so you could really be confident in the bike and trust where it was going to go coming into corners and coming out of corners. One of the major changes to this bike is the updated frame and subframe. So this thing is all new, it's lighter and more narrow with updated frame spars, as well as a new down tube which is redesigned. Honda's telling us that they reduced lateral rigidity by 20% with this frame, and what they did was just trying to find more flex so the bike would be more comfortable going over bumps and easier to turn, rather than last year where the bike was a lot more harsh. You had to work on suspension a lot last year to get the bike to handle well. The swing arm is also more narrow on this bike to improve handling as well. Diving into the suspension, the fork and shock are quite a bit different. The forks are 5 millimeters longer now, and Last year on the 2020 model, a lot of guys would drop the fork so they'd be flush in the clamps. This would put more weight on the rear end and balance the bike out a lot more. Honda knew that and they were doing the same thing, so they made the forks 5 millimeters longer. This gives the bike a little more balance straight off the showroom floor and also gives you more room for adjustment there as well. The shock is all new too. The shock bodies actually moved from the left side to the right side, so all the adjustments are made on the right side now, and the spring is new and it's lighter as well. To work with the updated suspension came a new linkage ratio also. So diving into the engine on the CRF450, the cylinder head has been updated as well as the cylinder head cap has been made thinner. It has a new decompression system and the exhaust port was also centralized and reshaped for efficiency as well. The air intake was increased significantly from 1.8 to 4.1 liters in the air box. So this air box has way more air now, and to help increase air in the air box, the air filter now mounts from the top. So a lot of you guys have seen this on the photos of the first look, and this greatly increases the volume of the air in the air box. The fuel injector angle was also adjusted from 30 to 60 degrees. The spray is able to reach all the way back to the butterfly to improve efficiency and give the bike a little more of a torquey feel. The fuel pump is smaller. Also, the exhaust has gone from a dual exhaust to a single exhaust, and we really are stoked on this. It's 2.5 pounds lighter and makes buying a new muffler cheaper. We also want to note that they did add a sight glass. Previously, Honda didn't have a sight glass for the oil on their CRF450. Now they do, and it's right in front of the clutch cover. They also moved the oil intake where the oil cap is, where you install oil. They moved it from the left side where it was down near the countershaft sprocket. Now it's on the right side, right above the clutch cover. Lastly, with the internals on the engine, the clutch now has hydraulic actuation, and it also went from a 7-plate clutch to an 8-plate clutch to increase durability and give it a stronger feel when grabbing the clutch. And to be able to fit that 8th plate, they had to make the case on the engine wider as well, just slightly. So you can still fit your old clutch cover on there, but the cases behind the clutch cover are a little bit wider to fit that 8th plate. Diving into the mapping and the electronics on the CRF450, they simplified the handlebars now by taking the 2 different electronic areas for changing maps and also traction control and combining it into one spot. So now you can adjust maps, traction control, and kill the bike all in one spot. Diving into the bodywork on the 2021 Honda CRF450, the bodywork was a huge talking point, and a lot of people are comparing this to KTM or calling it a gas, a red KTM, but you gotta hand it to them. Honda worked to make the plastics simpler. They reduced the amount of bolts on the bike from 12 to 8, and also tried to make it easier to access maintenance points on the bike, as well as lighter weight in general. Personally, I think it looks pretty cool, and I also like the front number plate. Talking with some of the Honda guys and Trey Kennard, the front number plate is completely different. We heard that Honda Japan spent a lot of time in a wind tunnel trying to make it aerodynamic, and I think it kind of brings more of a retro theme back because it's a little bit flatter, a little more square, and as styles go in and out of style, I think the retro is coming back, and I actually like the more square front number plate on this bike. Additionally, the air filter is now accessible from the side. You don't have to take the seat off to get to the air filter. The Honda does have one 8mm bolt that you have to remove, and right behind it, you find the air filter. It was a little difficult for us to get to when you're mounting plastic onto plastic and you're taking it on and off and on and off every time you change your filter. It does get a little difficult to put on and off, and for us, it was a learning experience to try with the Honda 450, so we do expect that to be a little bit difficult, but at the same time, you gotta give and take, and this is what we got for 2021. All right guys, that's it for the nuts and bolts and the details of the 2021 Honda CRF450. Now let's dive into the good part, the riding impressions. For the last few months, my phone has been blowing up with people asking me, what's the 2021 Honda CRF450 like? Finally, I have an answer for everyone. This bike is awesome. It was a lot of fun to ride. I was really impressed, and I was actually more impressed than I expected to be after riding the 2021 CRF450. Let's dive into the bodywork and the chassis at first. Sitting on the bike, they set the sag to 105. It felt like it was a little bit taller in the rear, and that is important to note that the ground clearance is 8 millimeters taller at the bottom of the bike. I think I felt that as well. They also made the head angle just slightly steeper, which was interesting. I didn't expect them to do that because I know they were trying to get more balance out of the bike compared to the 2020 model. Still, even with the rear end feeling a little bit taller and the head angle being slightly steeper, this bike was still a lot more balanced than the 2020 model. And at the end of the day, I got to ride back to back with the 2020 model and the 2021 model, and it was really great for me to figure out the details on each bike. The thinner bodywork was definitely a plus for me, especially when I compared it to the 2020 CRF450. Diving into the flex of the bike and really the suspension and the handling, going back and forth between the 2020 and the 2021. The 2020 is a lot more harsh. It's a stiffer chassis with softer suspension is what it felt like to me. The bike's being pushed constantly front to back, and it's a little unstable at speeds. With the 2021, the new, softer and more flexible frame definitely felt like the whole bike was moving in unison and it was working together. And when Honda says they're looking to improve consistency, I think they achieved that with this more flexible frame and the new suspension they added as well. Lastly, with the bodywork, this bike is a lot thinner. You can feel it front to rear, especially with the single muffler in the rear. It's 70 millimeters skinnier at the rear end of the bike, and that really makes the bike feel a little bit lighter and just easier to throw around on the track. So I appreciated the overall thinner feel that the bodywork gave the bike as well. The power on the CRF450 is known for being high horsepower, hard to hold on to, and just explosive. But with the better handling that this bike has, it was a lot easier to ride through the corners. I did find myself dropping down to first gear in some of these corners, and I was kind of surprised on that. I was having to shift a lot coming out of the corners. I would drop down to first because I wanted that engine braking coming in, but then I'd have to shift to second as soon as I even got close to the exit of the corner. So for me, I was messing around with it. I was trying first gear in the corners, second gear in the corners, and even third gear in the corners, but it definitely lugs down in the corners with third gear. So overall, I was using second for most of the corners, and this bike doesn't have a lot of engine braking, and I really appreciate that. Less engine braking helps the chassis and the suspension to move more fluidly and work better overall, so that part was nice. However, I did like getting down to first gear because the extra engine braking did slow me down for the corner. So it's a give and take trying to figure out exactly what you're looking for. As far as the rest of the engine goes, I didn't have any huge complaints. It felt a lot smoother coming out of the corners, and I think that had a lot to do with the handling as well, but I could ride this bike a lot harder like some of the other models that I have, and I haven't been able to do that with last year's model. It was a lot harder to ride. I was more scared, more timid on the Honda 450. For this one, I could really hammer it, and I'm gonna trust that it's gonna go where I want it, and even if it kicks out a little bit, I can pull it right back. And that's that consistency and better handling that I'm looking for on the 2021. Diving into the mapping on this bike, map 1 is the stock map, map 2 is the mellow map, and map 3 is the more aggressive map. And the one thing that I don't appreciate about this bike is that you can't change it on the fly. You have to stop or at least put the bike in neutral to change between maps. So for me, when I'm testing different bikes, it's so much easier on the other brands where I can switch on the fly. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that on this one. So for me, I would just have to click it into neutral as I'm coasting down a straightaway and change the button that way. Map 1, stock map, my favorite map. Map 2 being mellow, it actually had a gurgly feeling off the bottom, and map 3, the aggressive map, had that same gurgly feeling. So a lot of the test riders today were complaining about that, and that was something that I noticed. It's not something that really bothers you when you're going wide open, going to the track, getting on the gas slowly. The bike has a little gurgle. It's not very confidence inspiring. So unfortunately, it sounds like they ran out of time and they weren't able to fix that. So it is going to be something that we're going to have to figure out as we move forward with this bike. In the engine department is the hydraulic clutch, and man, I really appreciated this, especially when I went back to back with the 2020 model. The hydraulic clutch is awesome, never faded throughout the day. It continued with a strong, consistent pull, and I really appreciated it. Double thumbs up to Honda for adding the hydraulic clutch on the 2021. And we're excited to keep riding this bike and putting a lot more hours on it to see how it holds up durability-wise. Suspension on the 2021 was good. It was a little bit soft for me. We went 2 clicks stiffer compression on the forks, and we also went 1 click in on the rebound on the fork as well. On the shock, we went 4 clicks stiffer on compression, 3 clicks in on the rebound, and we went 1/6 of a turn in on the high speed, just to make the suspension feel a little bit stiffer with the high speed straightaways and long steep downhills that we have here at Glen Helen. Even though we went in on the clickers with the suspension, it still was a little bit soft for me today. The track was fast and it was pretty smooth today, so it wasn't really a great indication on how this bike is going to handle when the track gets super rough. However, it was really fun, and Honda provided the perfect track to make us feel feel good on their new 2021. However, the bike did feel balanced, and I think the extra length at 5mm on the forks was definitely a plus on this bike, and I'm excited to see how it handles once we get it to a rougher track. We come back out here tomorrow for a Thursday at Glen Helen. It'll be a lot rougher. We'll really see how this bike shakes up against the other 2021 models. And the last major selling point of the new 2021 Honda CRF450 is that the bike is a lot lighter than it was in years past. This bike went from 237 pounds on the scales to 234 pounds. So if you read the Honda marketing tools that talk about all the updates on this bike and you do the math, it adds up to almost 5 pounds that have been shaved off this bike. However, when they added the extra plate in the clutch basket, they went from cable to hydraulic clutch actuation. This bike did gain a few pounds, so it evened out to be 3 pounds lighter than before. It was pretty funny adding up the different weight losses. They didn't mention that they gained weight a little bit as well. So if you add up the numbers, yes, it looks like 5 pounds have been lost, but really when it hits the scales, only 3 pounds weight savings over last year. I did feel that on the track. It might be a combination of the skinnier, more thin bodywork, but the thinner bodywork with the updated engine and the lighter weight definitely made this bike easier to maneuver on the track. So overall, it was a lot of fun to ride the 2021 Honda CRF450, but I really can't wait to put this bike up against our KTM, our Yamaha, our Husqvarna, Kawasaki, and even the Suzuki to see how this new model shakes down compared to the other bikes, and also once we get it on the rougher track, like I said as well. And a few more points worthy to note: this bike, when it hits the showroom floors, it's going to cost $9,599. So if you have a 2020 model and you have a lot of parts that you want to put on this bike, unfortunately, with it being all new from head to toe, there isn't a lot that you can swap. If you have aftermarket wheels, you can only put your front wheel on this bike, but the rear wheel is changed with the new, stiffer and stronger hub. The shock body, like I said, is completely different, so you can't put aftermarket shock on there. The forks are longer, and the fork lugs are also longer, a little more stiff as well. Triple clamps are stiffer. You're not going to be able to put those on here. The clutch cover is the same, so you will be able to add a new clutch cover on there. The foot pegs are the same, and the foot peg mounts are the same as well, and the brakes are the same as well. So if you have aftermarket brakes, foot pegs, front wheel, you will be able to swap them over. For the most part, the rest of this bike is different, and you're going to feel it on the price tag when you go to buy extra parts for it. As always, this was just our first impressions after day one of riding this bike. I did put 2.5 hours on this bike, but it was only me riding today, and we have a lot more of guys in the Motocross Action Wrecking crew from all shapes and sizes, speeds and skill levels. They'll be testing this bike, really breaking down to see what the durability is like, to see how it shakes up on different tracks, different riders, and against different bikes back to back. So stay tuned to a future issue of Motocross Action magazine for the full in-depth review and really the nitty-gritty, the nuts and bolts of this bike, and get all the details on it there. You can also check out motocrossactionmag.com for news, reviews, bike tests, videos, and more, and this bike will be on there as well. We have all the in-depth details on our website with the first look of this bike. You can check it out in the description below. We'll have a link to it there. So stay tuned for the 2021 Motocross Action 450 shootout, where we'll be putting this all new CRF450 against the rest of the new models for the new year to figure out which one's the best and which one you should buy when you go to the dealer yourself. But that's all for this video. Thank you for watching Motocross Action's First Ride video series. And wait, before you go, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel just to stay up to date with our latest video uploads. And to check out our latest First Ride videos, click the video thumbnails now.